In the kitchen where morning sunlight streamed in, Erin Watson was carefully pouring coffee while organizing the day's schedule in her mind. She had an important presentation at the architectural firm, followed by her son Oliver's art exhibition, and then the monthly barbecue at her parents' house in the evening. She let out a deep sigh. "Mom's probably going to shower Lisa's child with praise again today," Erin muttered. Erin's husband Michael came down the stairs and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Good morning." "Lost in thought again?" "Sorry," Erin smiled. "It's not about work. I was thinking about tonight's barbecue." Michael Watson was successful as an IT consultant, but his gentle nature and depth of understanding were his greatest strengths. He placed his cup beside Erin's and poured himself some coffee. "Barbara and Frank," he showed his understanding. "You're worried for Oliver's sake, aren't you?" Erin Watson had achieved great success in her career as an architect. Her designs had shaped the new Chicago skyline, but her relationship with her parents was complicated. She pulled her long blonde hair back while taking a sip of coffee. "My parents always give Lisa's family special treatment. I didn't mind at first. I've walked my own path and am independent. But now I can see that Oliver is hurting." Before she could finish speaking, 10-year-old Oliver Watson came racing down the stairs. The boy with delicate features and intelligent eyes held his school backpack in one hand. In the other, he carried his latest artwork, an impressive watercolor landscape. "Mom, I'm taking this to the art show today," he said excitedly. Erin felt proud of her son's talent and took his painting. "It's wonderful, Oliver. I hope Grandma and Grandpa can see it today too." Oliver's expression clouded slightly. "Grandma didn't look at my paintings last time either. She was watching Amy's gymnastics video the whole time." Erin and Michael exchanged glances. Barbara Morrison, a 64-year-old former high school teacher, was known for her strict and controlling personality. Her husband Frank Morrison, a 66-year-old veteran, rarely contradicted his wife. "This time will be different," Erin tried to reassure her son, but she was also trying to convince herself. After breakfast, Erin sent Oliver off to school and headed to work. That afternoon, she successfully delivered her important presentation, receiving enthusiastic applause from the client. However, her mind was already on the family gathering that evening. After picking up Oliver from school, they headed to the art exhibition. Oliver's paintings received much praise, and the art teacher spoke enthusiastically about his talent. Erin felt proud of her son but couldn't help wishing that her parents would be equally proud of him. "Will I show Grandma and Grandpa my painting at tonight's barbecue?" Oliver asked. Erin gently stroked her son's hair. "Of course. But remember, Oliver, sometimes people only see what they want to see. That doesn't diminish your talent or your worth." Back at home, while preparing for the barbecue, Erin thought about past gatherings. The monthly family gatherings were always held at Barbara and Frank's house, with Lisa's family taking center stage. Lisa Clayton, Erin's 32-year-old sister, was a stay-at-home mom, financially and emotionally dependent on their parents. Her husband Jason Clayton was a real estate agent who desperately tried to please his in-laws. And their 8-year-old daughter Amy was spoiled by her grandparents, getting everything she wanted. Erin had quietly endured this unfair treatment for years, but recently she had begun to notice that Oliver was being ignored by his grandparents. "I want to talk to you before the barbecue," Michael said in the evening as they were getting ready. His expression was serious. "What is it?" Erin paused from preparing the salad. "Your mother called me yesterday. She wanted my opinion on Amy's birthday present. They're planning a family trip to Disneyland." Erin stopped what she was doing. "What did they give Oliver for his birthday?" "A used basketball and a $10 bill, wasn't it?" Michael nodded. I don't think we should let this continue. We need to do something to change your parents' behavior. Erin took a deep breath. I never wanted to ruin my relationship with my parents. But I can't bear to see Oliver feeling unloved by his grandparents. In the car on the way to the barbecue that night, Erin turned to Oliver. Stay calm tonight no matter how you're treated. Sometimes you can learn a lot just by quietly observing. Oliver looked puzzled but nodded. Okay, Mom. Erin was surprised by her own determination. Tonight was not just about observing but standing up for her son. She took Michael's hand and nodded quietly. She knew he felt the same way. When Erin's car pulled up in front of her parents' house, she felt a slight tightness in her chest. The large white two-story house always evoked mixed emotions in her. It was a place where childhood memories mingled with adult frustrations. Here we are, everyone, Erin called to Oliver in the back seat. Michael squeezed her hand and gave a small nod. Ready? Yes, I'm ready, Erin said with a determined expression. Erin took a bowl of homemade quinoa salad from the passenger seat, and Michael carried a small box of desserts. Oliver carefully carried his art exhibition painting. The three of them walked along the gravel path toward the well-maintained garden. On this Sunday in May, beneath a clear blue sky, the lawn shone a vivid green. At the back of the garden stood a large oak tree, under which Lisa's family was already relaxing at the picnic table. Barbara Morrison had her granddaughter Amy on her knee and was stroking Amy's golden curls. Here, Amy, I brought your favorite ribbon. Barbara was tying a bright pink ribbon in Amy's hair. Oh, Erin, you're here, she said. Barbara's voice notably dropped in tone when she noticed her daughter's arrival. Frank Morrison stood proudly in front of the grill, wearing a white apron, preparing the meat. He was engaged in conversation with Jason Clayton and waved when he noticed Erin's family. Hey, you finally made it, Frank called out. I just started the fire. Erin smiled as she entered the garden. Hello, Mom, Dad. She placed the salad bowl on the table. Barbara looked at it and pursed her lips. Oh, salad again. Can't you make something more elaborate? Erin took a deep breath and controlled her emotions. Mom, this is a special quinoa and vegetable salad. I only used organic ingredients. It was a hit with my colleagues at work. Barbara waved her hand dismissively. Yes, that's fine, she said, turning back to Amy immediately. Now Amy, Grandma baked special cookies for you. Chocolate chip and peanut butter, your favorite. Amy clapped her hands happily. Yay! Thank you, Grandma. Oliver stood quietly, still holding his painting. Erin placed her hand on her son's shoulder. Mom, Oliver won an award at his school's art exhibition. He brought his work to show you. Barbara glanced briefly at Oliver but quickly looked away. Oh, that's nice. Amy also danced at the front of her kindergarten dance recital last week. She really has talent. Erin felt Oliver's shoulders droop slightly. She nodded to her son and whispered in his ear, It's a wonderful painting. Jason stood with Frank at the grill, enthusiastically discussing how to cook the meat. Lisa sat at the picnic table, taking photos of Amy on her cell phone. Michael, how about a beer? Frank called out. Michael nodded. Thanks, I'll have one. Erin guided Oliver toward the lawn. Why don't you try playing with Amy? Oliver looked anxious but gathered his courage and approached Amy. Amy, do you want to play catch? Amy frowned. I don't want to play with Oliver, she shouted. I'm going to eat cookies with Grandma. Barbara immediately embraced Amy protectively. Erin, don't force her. Amy is having special time with Grandma right now. Erin bit her lip. Oliver was just asking, Mom. Barbara sniffed. Your son should be more sociable. Amy is the most popular child in her class. Michael came to Erin's side and quietly touched her arm. It was a signal to stay calm. Erin took a deep breath and headed toward the table. Frank had started grilling the meat. Pointing to a large piece of meat, he proudly said, Lisa, Jason, Amy, I've saved prime rib for you. It's top quality. I got it from a special shop. Lisa said happily, Thanks, Dad. Amy loves meat. Erin frowned. Dad, what will Oliver get? She asked. Frank hesitated a bit. Oh, of course he'll get steak too, he said, but his eyes didn't meet Erin's. He quickly changed the subject and began asking about Jason's recent real estate deals. As time passed, the meal preparations were completed. Barbara spread an elaborately decorated tablecloth on the picnic table and arranged fancy paper plates and cutlery. Erin brought out the salad, and Michael put the dessert in the refrigerator. Come on, everyone, gather around. Frank called out loudly. The meat is ready. Everyone gathered at the table. Frank proudly brought the meat. In front of Amy was a perfectly cooked, tender-looking prime rib. Lisa and Jason also received juicy, beautifully pink meat. When Frank placed a plate in front of Oliver, Erin froze in shock. On Oliver's plate was a blackened, burnt piece of meat. The edges were charred, and even the center was brown and overcooked. Dad, what is this? Erin asked in disbelief. Barbara laughed lightly. It's a bit overcooked, but that's fine, isn't it? He's a boy. A little toughness is good for him. Frank chuckled and jokingly said, even a dog might not eat it. Lisa and Jason also started laughing. Oliver, you like the burnt parts, don't you? That's what boys like, Lisa said. Oliver was silent, staring at the burnt meat. Tears began to well up in his blue eyes. He was desperately trying to hold them back, but his small lips were trembling. Seeing this scene, Erin felt something break inside her. She slowly stood up and said in a calm voice, This is unacceptable. The table suddenly fell silent. What do you mean? Barbara asked. This meat, Erin pointed to her son's plate. Oliver, you don't have to eat it. But what a waste. Barbara cried. In our day, we ate with gratitude. Even if it's a bit burnt, it's still food. Everyone else's meat is perfectly cooked, Erin pointed out calmly. Why is Oliver the only one given meat like this? Frank shrugged. It just happened that way. I'll be more careful next time. Erin looked at Oliver. Tears were finally falling from his eyes. Seeing this, something inside Erin made a decision. She slowly stood up, took Oliver's plate, and threw it in a nearby trash can. Then she quietly declared, Michael, Oliver, we're leaving. Wait a minute, can't you take a joke? Frank protested. It's just a barbecue, don't make such a big deal out of it. Erin turned back and said in a quiet but powerful voice, This isn't a joke, it's abuse of my son. You may not realize it, but you treat only Amy specially and always put Oliver second. You show no interest in his art, don't celebrate his successes, and today you gave him burnt meat and made fun of him. Today is the last day of that. Barbara's face flushed. You always overreact. You're too sensitive. This isn't an overreaction. If anything, my reaction is long overdue, Erin responded calmly. She took Oliver's hand, and Michael stood up and placed his hand on Oliver's shoulder. For years, I've pretended not to see your unfair treatment. But it's over now. Lisa stood with her mouth open, at a loss for words. Jason looked uncomfortable, glancing at Frank and Barbara. Only Amy, not understanding the situation, continued happily eating her prime rib. Aaron's family quietly left the garden and headed to the car. No one tried to stop them. In the car, Oliver asked in a small voice, "Mom, did I do something wrong? Were Grandpa and Grandma angry?" Aaron sat next to her son and held him tightly. "Absolutely not. This is Grandma and Grandpa's problem. You did nothing wrong. You're a wonderful child." Michael, starting the car engine, looked at Aaron and Oliver in the rearview mirror. "It's okay, champion. Sometimes even adults make mistakes. But don't worry, Mom will fix this." Aaron gently wiped the tears from Oliver's cheek. "But don't worry, I'll fix this. I promise." As the car slowly pulled away, Aaron looked at her parents' house through the window. A new determination was growing within her. Aaron's family car drove quietly along the night road. Oliver had fallen asleep in the back seat, exhausted, and Michael, holding the steering wheel, occasionally glanced at his wife in the rearview mirror. Erin's expression was hard, her hands clenched on her knees. No one exchanged words, but the car was filled with heavy emotions. Upon returning home, Michael gently lifted Oliver and carried his sleeping son to his bedroom upstairs. Erin stood in the kitchen, mechanically making tea. Her mind was full of the events at the barbecue. When Michael came down the stairs and entered the kitchen, Erin was leaning on the counter, letting out a deep sigh. "How's Oliver?" she asked without turning around. Fast asleep, Michael placed his hand on her shoulder. "He was tired today." Erin finally turned and looked into Michael's eyes. Her eyes were moist with anger and sadness. "I made tea," she said, her voice small and trembling. They sat on the sofa in the living room, holding cups of warm chamomile tea. After a moment of silence, Erin finally spoke. "That crossed the final line," she said, trembling with anger. "For years, I've tolerated my parents' behavior. Their favoritism toward Lisa, their refusal to acknowledge my success. But today..." She faltered. "I couldn't bear to see Oliver hurting," Michael said quietly. "When I saw tears in his eyes, I felt something break inside me too." Erin took a sip of tea and set down her cup. "I can't stand to see him feeling unloved by his grandparents anymore. This isn't just favoritism, it's outright abuse." Michael nodded. Today made it clear. This isn't just a generational gap or a lack of understanding. They're intentionally hurting Oliver. "We should take action," he continued. "But what should we do? Should we completely cut ties with your parents?" After a long silence, Erin looked up with a determined expression. "I'll make them feel the same way. I have a plan." Michael noticed the change in his wife's expression. "What kind of plan?" "First, we'll invite them to our house. A dinner party for reconciliation," Erin began explaining. "And then, we'll serve them a special meal. The same treatment Oliver received." "That's not enough," she continued. "Next, we'll plan a special vacation that includes the whole family. But we'll exclude only my parents." Michael raised his eyebrows. "You're serious?" "Completely serious." Erin's voice was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. "It's time to correct years of imbalance. They need to be taught a lesson." Late that night, they worked out the details of the plan. Michael understood Erin's anger and promised to support her. They shared Erin's feelings of having suffered from her parents' unfair treatment since childhood. The next morning, Erin got up early and immediately put her plan into action. After Oliver went to school and Michael headed to work, she began making phone calls. The first call was to her chef friend Carlos Sanchez at the upscale restaurant, Lucille. He was grateful to Erin for designing the new branch of his restaurant and felt indebted to her. "Carlos, it's been a while. This is Erin Watson," she said on the phone. "I'm planning a special dinner party. But I have an unusual request." She explained the situation to Carlos and talked about her plan. "I need 2 completely different dinner courses. One using the finest ingredients for a perfect meal. The other," she continued, choosing her words carefully, "I want it to look the same but be inferior in taste and quality. Especially the meat dish, I want it slightly burnt." Carlos was a bit perplexed, but after hearing Erin's story, he understood her plan and agreed to help. "I got it, Erin. I'll create a special menu for you. Exactly as you wish." Next, Erin contacted Michael to confirm that he was also taking action. Michael had contacted a luxury travel agency to book a family trip to a private resort in the Caribbean. Caribbean Blue Resort was a top-tier facility with private beaches and individual villas. "The reservation is confirmed," Michael reported over the phone. "The first week of next month, 7 nights and 8 days. I secured a large villa that can accommodate the entire family except your parents." Erin nodded with satisfaction. "Perfect. I'll contact all the relatives now." In the afternoon, Erin sent special electronic invitations to all relatives except her parents and Lisa's family, Erin's uncles and aunts, cousins, and Michael's family as well. The invitation for a special family reunion party in the Caribbean included photos of the luxurious resort and a note saying, "Please keep this a secret from Barbara and Frank as there is a surprise element." Responses began arriving immediately. Many relatives excitedly confirmed their participation. A message from Erin's Aunt Karen was also attached. "I won't tell Barbara. We've been concerned about how she treats Oliver for a long time." By the time Michael returned from work and Oliver came back from school, Erin was still in her study making plans. Oliver came into the room and peeked over his mother's shoulder. "Mom, what are you doing?" he asked curiously. Erin closed the screen and turned to her son with a smile. "Just making some plans," she gently stroked his hair. "Sometimes, Oliver, people need to accept the consequences of their actions. This is an adult matter, so don't worry about it." Oliver seemed to be trying to understand his mother's words. "Is it about Grandma and Grandpa?" Erin was surprised by her son's perceptiveness. "Yes. But don't worry. Mom will make everything better," she gave him a reassuring smile. "How's your homework? Need help?" 2 weeks later, all preparations were complete. Erin took a deep breath and called her parents. "Mom?" When Barbara's voice came through the phone, Erin tried to keep her voice calm. "Hello, Mom," she said gently. "I have a suggestion for you. After the incident at the barbecue the other day, I'd like to host a special dinner party to repair our relationship. It will also be an opportunity to show you our new house." On the other end of the phone, Barbara seemed to hesitate. "Well, that's nice. But you were so angry." "Yes, I was angry," Erin admitted. "But thinking about Oliver, I believe family bonds are important. He needs a good relationship with his grandparents." Barbara was silent for a moment but finally agreed. "Of course, we should get along as family. I'll let Frank know." Erin proceeded with the conversation as planned. "Lisa's family has other plans, so they can't come. So let's make it a special night just for us. It's a shame Lisa and Amy won't be there." Barbara's voice clearly showed her disappointment. Erin smiled and responded calmly, but that will give you and Oliver more time to get to know each other better. He really wants to know you better. After hanging up, Erin reported to Michael. They're coming. Next Friday, 7 p.m. Michael embraced his wife's shoulders. Are you ready? No regrets. Erin shook her head. No regrets. This isn't revenge, it's a lesson. To help them understand the weight of their actions. On the day of the dinner party, Erin and Michael's house was perfectly prepared. Beautiful flowers adorned the table in the dining room, and soft jazz music flowed through the room. Carlos and his assistant had entered through the back door and were making final preparations in the kitchen. Erin placed an expensive bottle of wine on the table and said to Michael, "Carlos has prepared the food according to my instructions. The main dishes look the same, but..." She smiled slightly. Michael took his wife's hand. "You're really going through with this?" "Of course," Erin said with determination. "Tonight they will learn a lesson. And tomorrow, the real sanctions begin." She gazed at her parents' seats at the dining table. They looked like the luxurious table settings for everyone else, but hidden there was the special hospitality that only they would receive. The doorbell rang, and Erin took a deep breath and headed for the door. At 7 o'clock on Friday evening, Erin was looking out the large living room window. She wore a dark blue dress, her hair beautifully styled up. The outdoor lights installed in the garden cast a soft light into the evening darkness. Michael came down the stairs and stood beside her. He was wearing a fine navy suit. "Nervous?" he asked gently. Erin shook her head slightly. "Not nervous. Just want to make sure this is the right thing to do." Michael placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. "What you've decided is right. They need to understand what their actions lead to." Oliver was in the kitchen, curiously observing Carlos's assistants. He was wearing a neat shirt and pants, looking a bit more grown-up than usual. "Boss, everything is ready," Carlos emerged from the kitchen to report. Dressed in a white chef's coat, he exuded a professional air. "I've prepared the food as instructed." Erin smiled appreciatively. "Thank you, Carlos. I truly appreciate your help." The doorbell rang, and everyone in the room froze for a moment. Erin took a deep breath and headed for the entrance. Opening the door, she saw Barbara and Frank Morrison standing there. Barbara wore a beige dress with a pearl necklace. Frank was in a gray suit. Both looked a bit tense. "Good evening," Erin said in a calm voice. "Welcome." "Good evening, Erin," Barbara smiled slightly. "We brought this," she offered a bottle of wine. Erin accepted the bottle and invited them into the house. "Thank you. Please come through the living room to the dining area." Barbara and Frank stepped into the spacious living room and admired the high ceilings and the view from the large windows. Modern, elegant furniture was arranged throughout, and abstract artwork adorned the walls. "My, what a lovely home," Barbara exclaimed in surprise. "You two have really succeeded to afford such a fine house." Erin smiled. "Yes, it's the result of hard work. My architectural business is doing well, and Michael's IT consulting is expanding." Frank looked at the view outside the window and nodded appreciatively. "Impressive view. Must be a great investment as real estate too." Michael approached to greet them. He politely extended his hand and said, "Welcome." Oliver also appeared from behind the adults and gave his grandparents a small wave. "Hello, Oliver," Barbara said somewhat awkwardly. "How are you?" Oliver glanced at his mother before quietly answering, "I'm fine, thank you." Erin clapped her hands lightly. "Now, shall we proceed to the dining room?" She led the group. The dining room had a beautifully decorated table, with silver cutlery and crystal glasses gleaming. An elegant chandelier hung from the ceiling, under which Michael and Oliver were already seated. The entire room was bathed in warm light, with soft classical music playing in the background. "Please, sit here," Erin guided Barbara and Frank to one end of the table. She herself sat next to Oliver, while Michael sat on the opposite side of the table. Erin poured the wine and proposed a toast. "To family bonds," she said quietly. Everyone clinked glasses and took a sip of their drinks in a slightly awkward atmosphere. "How are Lisa and Amy?" Erin started the conversation. Barbara's expression brightened. "Oh, they're doing very well. Amy has started ballet lessons. She seems to have talent," her teacher was praising her. Erin smiled. "That's wonderful," she placed her hand on Oliver's shoulder. "Oliver also won first prize in the school art contest last week." Barbara and Frank looked a bit surprised. "Oh, congratulations," Frank said, but there was no enthusiasm in his voice. At that moment, Carlos and his assistants brought out the appetizers. Beautiful appetizers, smoked salmon carpaccio with arugula salad, were placed in front of Michael, Erin, and Oliver. The colorful dishes looked like works of art. However, in front of Barbara and Frank were placed cold canned soups. They were brown liquids with a thin layer of oil floating on the surface. "What is this?" Barbara asked in confusion. She was comparing her plate with those around her. Erin responded as if nothing was wrong. "Oh, canned soup. I bought it on sale at the supermarket. It might be a bit old, but it's still edible." Frank frowned. "What are the others eating?" He pointed to Michael's plate. "We have special appetizers," Erin answered. "Carlos made them especially for us. But don't worry, the main course will be coming soon." Barbara had a puzzled expression but took her soup spoon and took a sip. She grimaced. "This has hardly any taste. And it's cold." Erin shrugged. "Is that so?" "I can't tell. But it's edible, isn't it?" Oliver quietly ate his appetizer while carefully observing his grandmother's reaction. Michael took a sip of wine and exchanged glances with Erin. After the unpleasant appetizer time passed, Carlos brought out the main course. Perfect steaks, specially prepared by Carlos, were placed in front of Michael, Erin, and Oliver. The juicy, tender-looking meat was served with a fragrant sauce and colorful vegetable sides. In contrast, blackened pieces of meat were placed in front of Barbara and Frank. The edges of the meat were charred, and the whole piece looked hard and shrunken. Barbara changed color and poked the meat with her fork. It was as hard as a stone. "This is inedible," she said angrily. "What is the meaning of this?" Erin replied calmly. "It's a bit overcooked, but that's fine, isn't it? Even a dog might not eat it, but..." She spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully. Frank stared at the meat and then suddenly looked into Erin's eyes. His face began to redden. "This is intentional, isn't it?" His voice was low, suppressing anger. "Yes, Dad," Erin answered calmly. "This is exactly the same treatment Oliver received from you 2 weeks ago. You served Oliver burnt meat and laughed about it. How does it feel? Embarrassing? Hurtful? Do you feel worthless?" Barbara sat with her mouth open, dumbfounded. "That was just a joke." "A joke?" Erin's voice rose slightly. "Serving burnt meat to a 10-year-old child and making everyone laugh at him is a joke." Frank sank deep into his chair. "We didn't mean it that way. You've always treated Oliver as second best," Erin continued. "You make special cookies for Amy, give her premium meat, and praise her talents. But for Oliver, you refuse to recognize his artistic talent, his gentle heart, anything. Barbara began to cry. This is so cruel of you. Punishing us, making us feel this way. Aaron stood up and took an envelope from a side table, handing it to them. These are tickets for a family trip starting tomorrow. Caribbean Blue Resort in the Caribbean. Oliver, myself, Michael, and all the other relatives will be going. We invited Lisa's family too, but we didn't invite you. Frank stared at the envelope and checked its contents. His expression changed as he began to understand. You're excluding us from a family trip. Yes, Aaron said firmly. This is what you've been doing to Oliver for years. Excluding him from family gatherings, shutting him out of special moments, denying his value. Until you understand how you've been treating Oliver, you will be excluded from our lives. Parents should love their children equally. If not, you lose your privileges as grandparents. Barbara covered her face with trembling hands. You're trying to shame us. No, Aaron's voice softened slightly. I want you to understand how Oliver has felt. How much he's been hurt every time he sees Amy getting special treatment. Tonight's dinner will be over in an hour. But Oliver's emotional wounds have lasted for years. Frank leaned his elbows on the table and held his head. The room was enveloped in heavy silence. Oliver said in a small voice, I like to draw pictures. I wished Grandpa and Grandma would look at them. Those words brought fresh tears to Barbara's eyes. She stared at Oliver as if seeing him truly for the first time. Oliver, she faltered. Aaron placed her hand on her son's shoulder. This isn't a cruel act but a lesson. An opportunity for you to change. If you truly love Oliver, think about what you should do. Michael stood up and said, Carlos, please serve a real dinner for everyone. Let's eat together as a family for a new beginning. Carlos brought new dishes from the kitchen. This time, the same beautiful food was served to everyone. However, the atmosphere of the evening had changed. Barbara and Frank ate silently, occasionally staring at Oliver. In their eyes floated new emotions, shame and regret. Aaron took a sip of wine and gazed at the night sky outside the window. In her heart, justice was being realized. Tomorrow, they would head to the Caribbean, leaving only her parents behind. And during that time, they would have time to think. She smiled as she watched Oliver happily eating his meal. A photo of Aaron, Michael, Oliver, and relatives smiling against the backdrop of the Caribbean's turquoise blue sea and white sand beaches. Aaron posted the photo on social media with the caption, Best Family Vacation #LovingFamily #Caribbean Memories. A month had passed since the trip, but warm memories came flooding back each time she looked at the photo. Erin put down her smartphone and stood by the window, gazing at the garden. The Caribbean trip had been a wonderful experience. Oliver had built sand castles with his cousins, enjoyed snorkeling, and every day had been an adventure. Erin's aunts and uncles also seemed to relax more freely without Barbara and Frank present. "Mom, look!" Oliver burst into the living room, showing his new painting. It was a vibrant watercolor of tropical fish they had seen during the trip. "I'm entering it in the school exhibition." Erin took her son's work and smiled. "It's wonderful, Oliver. You really have talent." Michael appeared from the kitchen and placed his hand on Oliver's shoulder. "This is a masterpiece. We should frame it and display it." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Who could that be? Erin frowned. She wasn't expecting visitors. Michael headed to the door and looked through the peephole. His expression changed. It's Barbara and Frank, he said quietly. Erin tensed up. Since the Caribbean trip, Barbara had called several times, but Erin had ignored all the calls. She felt she wasn't ready to talk to her parents yet. Her anger had not cooled. Should I open it? Michael asked. Erin took a deep breath and said, open it. Turning to Oliver, she said, would you play in your room for a while? We need to have an adult conversation. Oliver hesitated a bit but nodded and went upstairs. Michael opened the door. Barbara and Frank Morrison stood at the entrance. Both looked tired, appearing older than usual. Frank held a brown envelope in his hand. Barbara's eyes were red, as if she had been crying. May we come in? Frank asked quietly. Erin hesitated but nodded slightly. Please do. The two entered the living room. Barbara didn't try to sit on the sofa but stood in the center of the room, staring at Erin. What do you want? Erin asked coldly. Her voice still contained anger. Barbara was tearful. We understand what you were saying, Erin, her voice trembled. We were wrong. Terribly wrong. Frank stood beside his wife and placed his hand on her shoulder. We've had time to think about many things, he said. What you did to us was justified. We deserved it. Erin crossed her arms and said, yes, you did deserve it. Frank opened the envelope and took out a letter. His hand was shaking slightly. This is our apology and promise, he said as he began to read. Dear Erin, Michael, and especially Oliver. We acknowledge that for years, we have unconsciously treated you unfairly. We have favored Lisa's family and hurt Oliver. We are ashamed. Frank paused for a moment and cleared his throat. We only gave special attention to Amy and didn't try to see Oliver's talents and uniqueness. For the first time, through the experience you gave us, we understood how hurtful our actions were. When we heard about the family vacation that didn't include Lisa, Jason, and Amy, we felt the pain of exclusion for the first time. Barbara spoke up. I saw your photos on social media every day. Everyone looking so happy. And I thought, so this is what Oliver has been feeling. Frank continued. We promise to change from now on. If you'll forgive us, please give us the opportunity to repair our relationship with Oliver and become true grandparents. We've also started family therapy. Please give us another chance to start over. After he finished reading the letter, the room was enveloped in silence. Erin's stern expression softened slightly. We want to apologize to Oliver too, Barbara said softly. In person. Erin thought for a moment and exchanged glances with Michael. Michael gave a small nod. Oliver. Erin called toward the stairs. Could you come down for a moment? Oliver carefully came down the stairs. He looked a bit nervous when he saw his grandparents. Barbara slowly knelt down to Oliver's eye level. There were traces of tears on her face. Oliver, Grandma and Grandpa did something very bad. We didn't treat you specially, and we didn't recognize your wonderful talents, she took his hands. You are a wonderful child, and we love you. Can you forgive us? Oliver thought for a moment and asked with a serious expression, will you give me steak instead of burnt meat too? The tension in the room dissolved instantly. Frank couldn't help but laugh, and while holding back tears, he said, I promise, champion. I'll cook you the most delicious steak in the world. In fact, I'll teach you how to cook if you want. And will you show me more of your paintings? Barbara added. I want to display them in Grandma's living room. Oliver, looking a bit embarrassed, slowly nodded. Okay. Erin felt a warmth in her chest. She looked at Barbara and Frank and smiled. Rebuilding our relationship will take time. But let's move forward step by step. Several months later, the Morrison family had changed significantly. Barbara and Frank attended weekly family therapy sessions and began to understand their behavior patterns and how they had been formed. Barbara, in particular, made an earnest effort to change. She began to recognize that her controlling personality had been influenced by her own mother. Lisa was initially angry about Aaron's actions. "How could you humiliate our parents like that?" she protested. However, witnessing the change in her parents, she also began to reconsider her dependent relationship with them. "I've been spoiling Amy too much," Lisa confessed to Aaron one day. "You were right." When autumn came, the entire Morrison family gathered at Frank and Barbara's house. Without the previous tension, the table was filled with laughter. Barbara baked special cookies equally for Oliver and Amy, and proudly displayed both children's recent works, Oliver's paintings and photos from Amy's dance recital. Frank had taken up woodworking as a hobby after retirement and was teaching Oliver the basics. They built a small birdhouse together and placed it in the garden. A new bond was forming between grandfather and grandson. Every Sunday, Barbara baked special cookies for Oliver and praised his artistic talent. "You'll be a famous artist someday," she would say, and display his latest work on the refrigerator. Seeing the change in her family, Erin was convinced that her actions had been right. Sometimes tough love is necessary. She stood by the window, quietly smiling as she watched Frank and Oliver playing in the garden. The wounds had healed, and family bonds were stronger than before.